Good evening, everyone. I don't know if we have
I've got it.
The audio is going now, at least.
Okay. Keep moving along. Consider the approval of the city council meetings of August 3rd, closed session also on the 3rd, city council meeting and executive session on the 17th of August, and a council workshop on August 24th and 31st. Are there any questions regarding the minutes of those meetings? If not, is there a motion to approve?
Make a motion. Second.
Motion made and second. I guess we're gonna, does Carol can see the remote, folks?
No.
I just need a full
Yeah,
screen.
Christine, can you hear us?
Change it to gallery view.
Yes.
She's put a note
Someone's
up a minute
trying to
ago that
chat.
she was having trouble hearing us, and so was Deanne.
Yeah, might be the storm.
Yeah.
At least if we could see them, they could pick up.
I can hear Carol.
Ah, there we go.
Okay.
Ah,
Check.
Okay.
There you are.
So why don't we do a roll call vote, Carol, on these?
On the
Who roll
consent
call,
agenda.
yeah.
Okay.
I don't want to miss the online folks.
Okay, Bolin,
yes.
Higgins,
Yes.
Reuter,
Yes.
Schott,
Yes.
Allen,
Yes.
Murphy,
Yes.
Lyons,
Yes.
Crow,
Yes.
Mush,
Yes.
Florence,
Yes.
Eberly,
Yes.
Schneider,
Yes.
11 A's, or 12 A's.
Thank you. Next section is a public hearing to consider an ordinance supporting the fiscal 2021 budget. Before we open the public hearing, John, would you like to give us a synopsis?
Sure. We've been working on this for several months, and after a workshop with the City Council last Monday, a meeting prior to that with the Finance Audit Committee, we're happy to present the budget for fiscal year 2021, takes effect October 1st. This is a budget of $55,250,366. That's about $27 million higher than a typical City of Rolla budget would be. And so before we become too alarmed of spending going out of control, there's some reasons that this is a much higher inflated budget than what we would typically see. The voters approved a bond issue a couple of years ago for some major sewer treatment plant projects, and there's $17.2 million in this budget to complete some of those expansions of two of our treatment plants. We've also got $7.8 million in this budget is a pass-through of TDD funds, and so everything from Kings Highway to the University Drive realignment is all budgeted. City manages that project, but that becomes TDD reimbursement. And the project does include, or the budget does include $2.5 million for a street shop relocation from existing facilities on Sharp Road out onto McCutcheon. So if you were to pull those three big publicly funded projects out of the budget, we'd be sitting at a budget just under $28 million, which is very much in line with what the budgets have been for the last few years. It's another tight budget. We're saying that year after year. This particular budget is able to incorporate the use tax that the voters approved in November, when took effect April 1st of this year, had our first receipts in June, and so we've received 3 months' worth of use tax proceeds and have budgeted in this fiscal year 2021, $475,000 of the use tax going towards public safety purchases, both in compensation for police, fire, and animal control, but also for some equipment and a vehicle purchase. So that's a significant change to the general fund, but most everything else in the general fund is pretty consistent with what we've done in years past. The budget includes a 1% COLA for all city employees, full-time city employees. The budget also anticipates a couple of positions. It includes a third school resource officer position that the Rolla Public Schools approached us about a few months ago. We currently have 2 school resource officers dedicated to the schools. They pay 75% of that salary. We pick up 25%, and they asked if we would consider doing a third, them paying 75% and us paying 25%. So that is included in the budget, as well as an additional maintenance position in the Parks Department, as we know we're going to lose or have lost our prison crew, 8 employees that we would bring up part-time or seasonally from the Licking Correctional Facility, and so we're just need to supplement some maintenance services in the Parks Department. As you know, we have contracted out the center's operations, so that's included in the budget as a really almost as a pass-through. It's a lump sum dollar coming in for memberships generated from Power Wellness, and we'll be monthly paying them a fee, so we'll get out of all of the payroll expenses and the day-to-day operating expenses of the center. The budget also anticipates at least exploring that same kind of arrangement with the splash zone, as we've always partnered with the indoor aquatic facility and running the splash zone, the outdoor facility maintained by the Parks Department. So we're at least in the budget exploring the feasibility of doing that. The budget also includes a small increase in sewer fees and an increase in building permit fees. With that, I'd be happy to answer any questions and certainly entertain the public hearing on the first reading.
If there's any questions, Dan and Christine, if you have a question, if you could just put your hand up in there, I'll keep an eye on you. Any questions from council? Rachel?
Okay, so, John, because I was looking at the materials in the packet for this week and then the materials we were given last week, and I had noticed there had been some adjustments. So, for instance, the adjustment to the stuff for the recreation fund and all, that's counting in the Power Wellness contracts?
Right, correct.
Okay.
Yes.
Okay, yeah, I was just, because I just noticed some adjustments from the, like on the revenue side and the expenditures, and I was just curious what the.
For the rec center specifically?
Or just in general, like, was it checking the math or?
Yeah, so there was a little bit of checking math. For instance, I think it was Jody that caught the $65,000 or $85,000 change, and so that was a correction made in there.
Mm-hmm.
The center, I don't recall any changes to the center's budget. We were responsible for the employees and the operation until middle of November, so we're showing a 2-month budget from the city standpoint and then a 10-month under a contract arrangement. I don't know that changed any of the bottom lines on the fund balance for the center. And of course, we made the change for the increase in the body cameras, and so that affected the general fund, pulled that balance down a little bit more there. But
Yeah.
very few adjustments in what's in the final draft from what we saw at the workshop last Monday, but there were some tweaks
Yeah,
in there.
'cause I was like looking at the expenditure totals for the different funds, and it looked different, but.
Again, a couple
That's
lines,
what
but I
it is.
I can't remember anything
All right.
significant that would have changed that.
Okay.
Any questions, David?
I have one thing, just want to clarify. That is about, if I understand correctly, like you said, we've added a third resource officer and a position in the parks, it says here. I want to ask a question about the school resource officers in terms of, these aren't officers that are being pulled away from our force, these are extra officers. Is that correct?
Correct.
Okay, and these extra officers, we wouldn't have them if the schools weren't asking for them. We wouldn't have those positions necessarily. Is that true?
I would say that's true. We could have the chief there. We'd have some of them because a lot of the police officers' time spent responding to school needs regularly. So I would say if we didn't have an arrangement where they were paying for 3 of them, we might get by with 1 of 3, and just knowing that lots of different officers spend time in the school district at that point.
So they report to the schools each day and currently are assigned 100% of their work days there, but can be pulled aside if there's an incident in the city.
Correct.
Is that correct? Okay. So I just wanted to make a couple of comments related. The mayor has continually asked us throughout our budget workshops to look critically at our currently very tight financial position and to have open discussions and make prudent and sometimes difficult decisions that can alleviate the coming deficits in our budget. I'm seeing in the budget that the schools are going to be paying 75% for the SROs, but I wanted to clarify what that means. Does that mean that they pay for 75% of what it takes to put the officer out the door of the police station or not? Because as I understand, does the city still have to pay for all their training and accreditation? Does the city still pay for their car? Does the city still pay for the many pieces of equipment that, as Chief says, fills up the whole back end of their SUV? So here's my point and concern. I'm in no way questioning the interest of RPS having these officers, and I also see the benefit that our city gets by having another officer on so-called standby with the ability to respond as backup if not needed at the schools. But with 100% of their normal duty day assigned to the school, are we really recouping what it takes to put another officer out on the road in our community? Some of the vehicles that we have to purchase for $45,000 potentially will go directly to equip one of these new positions or some of the new school resource officer positions, at least the one new, and may stop us from using our own street officers' vehicles. I mean, they're all RPS vehicles, but maybe we'd be able to replace one of the current ones if not. So these cars also still need to be replaced every 5 years or so. So the equipment and training that we give our officers is also not cheap. And so this is where I bring up RPS budget versus our budget. I actually don't have a great idea of the financial solvency of the RPS budget, although I do know that the voters recently approved a tax increase for RPS projects. I don't know much more than that myself. But what I do know is where we as a city stand. Like the mayor mentions at each one of our budget meetings, we have gaps today that will grow bigger in the future. So regardless of the RPS budgetary position, I don't think that we can afford making decisions that could be seen as charity when we have issues of necessity unfunded in our budget, which get worse in the coming years. We potentially wouldn't be putting all of these officers on the road without RPS asking for them. So why are they not paying potentially 100% of these costs, salary, car, equipment, training? Or if we're saying that we get some benefit from them as backup, that makes sense, but shouldn't RPS still be potentially footing 75% of all the full costs and not just the salary? To me, it's clear that we can't afford giveaways in our budget. Isn't the right financial thing to do here going back to RPS and saying, we want to work with you on this, but look at where we are on our budget this year and in coming years. Would you be willing to fully fund the 75% of what it takes to put the officer out the door? To me, it seems reasonable. Otherwise, we're eating costs for providing them services. And let me just give a last example. When, for example, Stephanie provides financial services for partner entities, she doesn't give a discount or break. She charges, as I understand, the full amount or more that it costs her department to do the financial work she's taking on for these partner agencies. So I'm just asking the question, based on the mayor bringing this up a number of times, and hey, where can we look at the budget to make sure we're being as responsible as we can? With our current lingering budgetary issues, should we consider a change here in terms of just asking them if they'd be willing to, knowing that it's not just the salaries we're paying for, we are putting officers in cars, we're giving them training equipment, et cetera. So I just wanted to bring that up as a topic of discussion. It was one area that I certainly don't think we should deny the schools this in any way, but in terms of our budget, we know where we are. I don't know if there's a discussion that we could have with them about that.
Chief can certainly weigh in on it, but we do charge them the full cost of the officer, benefits, training, supplies, all those kinds of things. but-
Car as well, or?
Yeah, I think car, but I don't know that for a fact. Not car, Stephanie is saying, but
The school district does pay 75% of their salary, but we use the school resource officers for a lot of things besides just being in school. Before I get into what we use them for, our school resource officers by far write more police reports than any other officers on the street. They have to write, every incident in school now, by law, is required to write a police report on. So if we didn't have the school resource officers there, we would have officers that would normally be on the street patrolling, spending a majority of their time at the school district writing police reports. Anytime we are short on the street, we pull the school resource officer out of the school, put them on the street to cover a beat. They pay 75% of the salary because during the summertime, all three of those officers are working on the streets to help us out, which is where we pay the 25% for. All I'm saying is that the school resource officer program, it very much helps the school district, but it really helps us too. If we didn't have it, I would be having officers spend a great deal of time in the school district writing reports for, you know, every little incident now with School Safety Act, we have to write reports for. So I think $75, I mean, we have 3 officers and we're paying 2/3 of an officer's salary to get 3 officers out of it. So, you know, I think it's a good deal. They're not just in the schools. As a matter of fact, I have Wayne Repair, who is one of our school resource officers. He's, you know, we had an incident the other day. The main suspect from that is in jail in Columbia, and Wayne has been up there guarding him for the last few days. Instead of taking an officer off the street, we took him out of the schools and put him up there. So we do use them if we need them.
we'll also, once the budget gets approved, assuming it gets approved as proposed, or as council modifies, we'll end up bringing a contract back from the schools.
Yes.
We'll have to update that, and council can certainly weigh in, but we do show the full cost, not just the salary of those
They
officers.
pay,
but not
we
car,
figured
that's a
out-
good
Matter
point.
of fact, that's one of our jobs. We figure out exactly what that police officer costs, and that includes their training. School district pays for most of their training while they're doing training, while they're in school, and for all their equipment, for their insurance, for their retirement. That's all figured into the cost of it.
You said equipment, just to clarify, so they'll pay 75% of the equipment that the officers?
But what they do is, on this 3rd school resource officer, they agreed to fully equipping an officer to bring him on there. The only thing that they are not paying for is the vehicle, but, you know, because they use the vehicle. The only thing that they use the vehicle for is to drive to the school and back from the school, but we use them all the
Gotcha.
time.
Okay. Thanks for clarifying a bit.
Okay.
Any other questions?
I have a question.
Go ahead, Lister.
I don't remember us talking about this before. I was seeking an understanding of why we won't be able to use the workforce from the penal institution.
COVID has shut it down. We hope it will reopen next year, but they're
Conservative.
being very, and I think the state is being very cautious about the potential of getting COVID into the institution, so.
Okay.
If there's no other questions, I'll circle back to council, but I'd like to officially open the public hearing. Are there any citizens that wants to come to speak regarding the proposed fiscal 2021 budget?
I'm Ray Schwackart, 1342 South Rolla Street. I've got just a short statement I'd like to read. When the use tax was being promoted, the main emphasis was on salaries, with very little being said about new programs. The body cameras are a new program in my books. As I understand it, this will be $45,000 a year, every year, for the length of whatever contract that can be negotiated. That will be an expense that cannot be modified in the case of any economic downturn. And the revenue stream to pay for it only has a 6 months history for Lyle. It is my opinion that this money would be better spent getting police salaries competitive with our neighboring communities. The sooner the better. If our police raises are in the 5 to 6% annual rate, it will take a decade to catch up. In that time, we could have lost on a chance to retain or to hire quality officers. While I agree that body cameras are very desirable, I urge that the council postpone purchasing these at this time. That's all.
Thank you, Ray.
Hello, my name is Lana Sowers, 1551 Timber Creek. Hello, everyone. I'm one of several people who served on the Use Tax Committee. Our official name was Citizens for Public Safety First. We did a lot of research on what is a use tax so that we could present to the voters exactly what a use tax involves. Some things we talked about was, which I was very involved in, was how this would level the playing field for our businesses who are competing against online companies outside of Missouri. But we also then addressed to the voters the things that had been prioritized as extreme needs for public safety. For example, Rolla PD is short of police officers. It's still at 3. We have police officer and firefighter compensation that is lagging behind a lot of other markets that are the same size as we are. There's fleet replacement that needs to happen. All the officers also rely on, as you all know, mobile devices that are critical when there is an emergency. As you probably remember, to replace those was an incredible $855,000. The ones we have can no longer be serviced. We all learned that. Rolla firefighters are still short 4 firefighters. Rolla Animal Shelter, as we all know, is in desperate need of replacement. And 50% of the funds have been raised, but there's still a lot of money, several $1,000s, $100,000 per year, whatever, for an animal shelter. This is what we presented to the voters for the use tax. This is what they paid for. When you're trying to explain an issue, you explain it as carefully as you can, and then you tell them what the money is going toward. So this is not a slush fund that we can say, oh, by the way, wouldn't it be nice to have body cameras? I think everyone tends to agree body cameras would be great. And we hope to get those down the future, down the road. But right now, you all, we're still 22% behind in police officer salaries, even with the use tax coming in now. We're behind Sullivan. Some of those officers are going to go to Sullivan. They don't want to live in Sullivan. They'd like to live here. But we're talking they get $15,000 a year more. That's huge, you guys. So we set this up with the voters that we have a critical problem with safety. We really told them the priorities have been set up. Chief Fagan has gone over them. Ron Smith has gone over them. We're looking at retention and recruitment and outdated equipment. outdated equipment, not new equipment. So we really should respect those priorities set up by these two professionals. These guys have experience. There's no reason why they would lead us a different way. So we can't just say, oh, set that aside. We've decided we're going to instead put body cameras on every police officer. If we can't hire police officers, there's probably no need for body cameras. So throwing those priorities out the window to me is just totally unacceptable. And if we do that, in my opinion, we have lied to the voters. And I have never been in a situation where we've lied to the voters. So, I really urge you to stay with the priorities we set up originally with the use tax and presented to our voters. Thank you.
Thank you, Lana. Is there anyone else that would like to speak to council? Yes, Alyssa.
Alyssa Jennison, 804 Winchester, Rolla. And I apologize, I don't have a prepared statement. Lana was saying something that kind of struck me, and we did make that commitment during the use tax committee meetings for the officers to have radios, to have pay raises, to retain them, and give them the equipment that they needed. I don't disagree that body cameras would be fantastic, but while she was speaking, I was thinking about last year I was at Rotary, and I had the privilege of hearing a war veteran speak, and one of the things he said was that the radio was his lifeline to help. It was how he made decisions. You know, if you know help is coming, you can keep it calm, you can keep it together until someone gets there. That is absolutely their lifeline. We haven't provided them new radios. That was the commitment. And I don't disagree with what she said. When we made that commitment to the voters, it will be hard in future campaigns to make promises. And I'm afraid there's going to be a breakdown of trust if we don't, does that make sense, make that commitment, keep that commitment that we made originally. So, thank you.
Thank you, Alyssa. Is there anyone else that would like to speak? While the public hearing is open, Carol, I would like to include in the public record the following personal statement. I'm concerned about the inclusion of $45,000 in the 2021 fiscal budget, earmarked for police body cameras. I believe body cameras now are certainly a want, and to some extent a need. What they are not is an immediate need or an emergency. In my opinion, this should be deferred to at least the 2022 budget discussions. My concern at the present time are, 1, we are relying on revenue from the local use tax. The forecasts in the 2021 budget are based on only 3 months of actual data, meaning actual collections. Our forecast may or may not be accurate, unlike the forecasts for general sales tax revenues, for which we have a much longer history. Secondly, we may in the next few years see the state of Missouri broaden the application of the use tax to all online purchases. Currently, only those online retailers with a physical presence in Missouri collect the use tax. State action could give our general fund some much-needed breathing room and put these kind of expenditures, ongoing expenditures, within reach. 3, our projected deficits in the general fund are real and significant, and all council persons know that. A projected deficit of $200,000 in as soon as 2022, growing to nearly $450,000 in the 2023-2024 time period. To date, we have not yet addressed how to balance that general fund, which will not be easy. 4, public safety represents approximately 72% of the general fund, with labor cost being the majority of that segment. Allowed expenditures of the use tax are all aspects of public safety, including equipment, training, and compensation. I do believe, however, that the public's view of the initial emphasis of the use tax collections are to be used for getting us fully staffed, retaining employees for these positions, and fair compensation. Large ongoing expenses like body cameras right now put pressure on those areas we wanted to concentrate on initially. With what we know and with what we don't know right now, I think a review in 2022 would be a more prudent course of action. Carol, I'll leave you a copy of that then. Thank you. Before I close the public hearing, is there anyone else that would like to speak to council? If not, the public hearing is closed. I defer now to City Council for either questions or statements. Carolyn?
I do think we should, if you want to say rescind, but we've already, the 45,000 should go to what it was earmarked for in the first place, and body cameras, terrifically important, but like you say, not now, not at this moment. If we can change what we've already got on there.
Okay, thank you. Terry?
I think the body cams are very important, but I also agree that maybe deferring them at least for another year is good. My concern is that if the state, I believe it's the state, mandates that the police departments have to have them, that we would be giving up the money that they would give us if we already have purchased body cams or are paying on a contract. And that concerns me that we would give up that money if we try to push it right away.
Thank you. David?
I have a couple statements. As I said before, I've been at the beginnings, the 0 point of the use tax and the discussions. I was one of the first people to bring that to council and say, hey, we should look at doing this. And I can tell you what was met with council is, you will never get a tax passed for this. People don't want another tax, etc. Now, I want to agree with some of the speakers that we did have some messaging that we put out. For me, my messaging was just honesty. Hey, look, we've got issues with our equipment. We've got issues with our staffing, especially our police department staffing. So the first thing I wanted to make clear, I'm not sure this has been fully clarified for the public. Almost 2/3 of the use tax budget is going to salary raises. No, we can't raise every officer $15,000 immediately, and probably not, it's going to take a little while. We realize that. We knew we wanted to move in that direction, and we're moving in that direction. So I just want to be clear that my priority in even bringing the topic to discussion to start with was the realization that we can't keep quality officers in the ranks, and we don't even have a pool to hire from. Chief didn't have a quality pool to hire from. So I want to link this together. People ask, well, body cameras aren't really a priority. To me, part of getting the best quality officers is having accountability and oversight. And for example, recent issues have come up. I don't know if everyone's kind of kept an eye on the news here in Rolla, but there's been a number of incidents, one specifically where a current officer at the time, he was an RPD officer, had an incident with someone. I imagine it's still being investigated because at this point there are felony charges coming against that officer. So one of the other issues I understand is that officer had been with other departments in the past. And this officer came to Chief's hiring pool at some point, and Chief has a limit to what he can ask previous departments. So it's very difficult to find out information about an officer, but this officer was potentially qualified and potentially ready to go, and we needed someone, and so we had that officer on our force. So what I'm trying to link here together is, if we raise our pay and we hire all fully our officers, but we don't have the accountability, first of all, it's very difficult to get the information to start within the hiring process. Chief can tell us more about that, but he's told me about it. It's just very difficult. The other departments can tell him what the dates of employment were, but they can say very, very little about the quality of the officer, what may have made them decide to leave or forced to leave. That's information that sometimes is impossible to get. So here's the concern. We hire officers, we raise the pays, we start attracting more. Yes, we're getting better pool of applicants, we should be able to make better choices. But once in a while, as we've seen in Rolla and in other places, it's possible to end up with a bad apple. And a bad apple is a problem because it causes mistrust in the public. It causes the public to not have the confidence in their whole police force. And of course, we want the public to have confidence in the whole police force, not to worry that there might be an officer that's a bad apple that might show up and do something that they shouldn't, and do something that then the public loses complete trust of their force, or a lawsuit comes about from that. I mean, all we got to do is read the news today to see that there's lawsuits in different cities, and we're lucky. We live in a little bit different of a place in Rolla, but this most recent issue and others have shown us that there is a bit of a cause to look deeper into this issue. So the point with the body cameras is we're focused on the raises, of course. We're focused on the hiring and the retention of the best and quality officers around. But we also have to have the ability for chief to hold his officers accountable, and for the public to feel the same way, that there's accountability. Hey, chief has the ability to have accountability within the department, and we, as we're giving these raises and we're encouraging the best, that we have that ability. And to me, that's why these go so close together. And that's why I think it's very important that we can't lose sight of that aspect of the body cameras. And I'd be concerned. I think now is the time, because yesterday was the time. I think this is a crucial tool in police departments, and I don't think it can be understated. And like I said, it ties right in with the raises, which are currently almost 2/3 of what we're giving out here. So the commitment that when I first started this discussion, the commitment that I made and that I promised everyone is that every dollar of the use tax will go to public safety, with a priority on raises for all of our public safety. But of course, we know our police department needs that the most. And I believe that this budget does just that.
Thank you. Is there any, Jody?
I have a procedural question, I guess. What are our options in terms of leaving the $45,000 in, taking it out, having the city staff continue to look at body cameras and look for a vendor that can provide those to us at a fair price, and then later in the year either add or take away that $45,000? If we leave it in today, can we then remove it later in the year if we find that a vendor can't provide us what we need at a good price? Or if we take it out today, can we then add it back in later in the year if we find out that the use tax is coming in gangbusters and we have quite a bit of money to work with?
John?
Yeah, yes to all of that. Council controls the purse strings and has the ability to modify the budget now. They have the ability to modify the budget throughout the year. And in addition, you ultimately authorize the actual expenditure. So an item over $10,000 comes back to the council for an award at that time. So this puts it in the budget. This is direction then for staff that we put together a procurement process that brings then proposals or a bid back to council, and the council then has to affirm that expenditure of dollars. So a lot of authority still rests with the city council. We aren't authorized to go and spend those dollars without council authorization on the expenditure.
Okay, because I believe that the body cameras are a useful piece of equipment that we ought to have. But I also understand that the voters have an idea of what they were voting for, and my priority would be to make sure that we have enough out of that use tax to take care of that compensation first. And if the body camera cost is going to impact our ability to do that compensation, then we need to delay that body camera work and look for it later.
Just so we understand the numbers, the needs in public safety are far, far, far greater than that use tax will ever give us. So we got to be cognizant that a large part of funding public safety, whether it's radios, body cams, or salaries, are coming from the general sales tax and the general fund. So we need to be a little cautious when we looked, the use tax is a subset of the general fund. We got to be a little careful when we say, oh, we're properly accounting for the use tax and it's going for public safety. Yeah, that's a great statement, but we still have got all of the other bills to pay associated with public safety. So they are connected. Marie?
Yeah, I just wanted to say that on some level, what we're having is a philosophical discussion about whether or not body cameras are essential equipment. And some people obviously disagree with that, and some people feel as though it were essential. We wouldn't be having this kind of discussion about tasers or batons or helmets even. And so in my mind, this is an essential piece of equipment. And a quick Google search will tell you that 80% of large police departments and 30% of small municipal departments include body cameras as essential pieces of equipment. And so that's all I have to say.
Thank you. Ann?
Yeah, at the budget meeting, we talked about this proposal being a good faith effort to hold in place a spot on the budget if indeed the investigation, the contracts, the equipment needs were going to be satisfactorily met and even above satisfactorily. What we had allowed in the budget at that time was a fourth police car.
That's right.
Okay, there's a fourth police car in the budget prior to us asking if we could allocate a hold in place good faith effort to potentially respond to this important need of a safety equipment for our officers and our citizens, and protect us from courts, litigation, or whatever it might be.
And with all due respect, you're mixing apples and oranges. The police car and the body cameras don't have anything to do with each other. The police car was a single purchase that was deferred. The body cameras are not a single purpose. You're equipping the police department for as long as we'll walk this earth with those body cameras. Number one. Number two, it's not like we said no police vehicle and that's $45,000 that'll never be spent. What we're really saying is let's wait another year. So that $45,000 is going to be gone next year when you also have another $45,000 on the body camera. So the math is a little bit different than I think the way you presented it.
Right.
David?
I just want to clarify that same thing. Cars are a one-time purchase that need renewed every 100,000 miles, 4 or 5 years. So that's also something that 27, 30, 40 cars, 45 grand, 45 grand, 45 grand, we're replacing some every year. So I do want to make sure this is absolutely clear. A budget was set up without body cams. Salaries were put in place. Decisions on raises were made by administration with the input of the chiefs, and the exact same salaries, the exact same amount of salary, body cam or no body cam, was in the budget. There was the body cams, $45,000 for body cams. I want to make this absolutely clear to everybody at home, anybody who's going to read the paper tomorrow, anything. The $45,000 has not been removed from salaries for our officers or our animal control staff or our firefighters. It was not. The exact same amount is what that they had in the original budget. We have never changed what we have proposed for that. We have not stolen money from their salaries and put that into body cameras. What we have done is we had 3 police cars in the standard general fund budget. That's what we would normally have ability to replace. With the use tax, it was thought, hey, why don't we try to go for an extra police car since we got a little bit of budget there left? Why don't we do that? And so instead of having 6, which we need, we were going to have 4, or that's what the desire was 6. This would take that down to 3. So the $45,000, just to be clear, it wasn't like, hey, let's take from the officers and take their pay raises away to get body cameras. No, We went down to one car, which, by the way, we'd already had to skim down to a couple already. So here's my thing about that and about the cars. I would feel more comfortable. John has mentioned that we'll have I don't know, when does the next reporting for the use tax come in?
Should get it.
Comes
this
in
week.
monthly.
This week, and that gives us the next month?
It'll be the September remittance.
September remittance. Okay, and then so that will give us something to judge between now and the next meeting, but also by January, we should be seeing a little more steady what's coming in. And so my point, and I think I made this at the last meeting, is I feel very comfortable getting a few more of those vehicles. If that's the other needs, that we got 3 of them and we want to go to a 4th or 5th or 6th, I feel very comfortable by January, if our budget is looking a lot better, to go for that. But, S&T has body cameras, St. James has body cameras. They're both smaller entities than we are. And to me, it seems not unreasonable to take this piece of equipment that really has become a very important piece for leadership and public accountability, make sure that is fully funded in our budget, and when it comes to January and we have some extra funds, let's help get those extra police cars. Certainly, we're not taking it from salaries, and I just wanted to make that clear.
For the record, city staff did not prepare a budget that included body cams. Stephanie, the 2 chiefs, and John did not prepare a budget based on body cams. Body cams are in there is because some of you people came to city council and said, we want body cams. So the initial recommendation from City Hall was not to include body cams, number 1. Number 2, you may be comfortable with another month or 2 of use tax, but I'm going to ask you a question. I'm going to go back to the document that you all saw. The budget deficit for 2022 is over $200,000, and in 2023, it goes up to $450 and levels off at that point. You tell me how comfortable you are to close that gap. Because that's what City Hall was looking at when they did not put body cameras in there. You can't cut your way to closing that budget just on nickels and dimes. You've got to take chunks of money out. And again, 72% of the general fund is public safety. So I guess I'm going to sit back in 2 years or a year and a half and watch you folks cut public safety, because that's a very real possibility. Unless you can miraculously find $200,000 to $450,000 per year. Matthew.
Last week I voted no on increasing the expenditures in the budget from $25,000 on body cameras to $45,000 on the body cameras. And the reason, at least in part, was I felt like we were being somewhat greedy with the use tax proceeds. It's not that I didn't think, or I still believe that we need body cameras. But I don't think that we should be using the use tax in this way at this time, buying basically or committing to buying the gold standard in body cameras that we haven't tested, to basically requiring this city to spend over the next 5 years roughly $250,000 on body cameras that we don't know if they're going to be effective or not. I've been doing criminal defense for 12 years now, and I can tell you some body cameras work great, some don't work at all. I've seen them off and on. Our sheriff's department here had body cameras at one time. They got rid of them because they broke every time they got in a little scuffle. So part of my concern is we're committing too much of our use tax dollars to body cameras. I think the administration, by putting the $25,000 amount in there to equip half our force with body cameras, was the right choice. It committed a much smaller amount of money for this year. But again, I would recommend that we go back to the $25,000. I think it's a reasonable compromise. It gives half our force top-notch body cameras. We can test them out, see if they work. If they work, great. And if the money comes in better than expected, and I hope it does, we can equip the whole force. But I think to basically commit $250,000 over the next 5 years is foolish at this time.
Any other council comments?
Mayor, this is my first go around, so I'm trying to get an understanding. This is the first reading of it,
This will be the first reading,
and so we're going to be reading it 3 different times and 2 times.
twice.
And
So
we can make
tonight's the
motions?
first reading. We'll have a short presentation in 2 weeks. At that point, or tonight, either time, you could modify the ordinance, or you could approve, or you could vote it down.
Okay, thank you.
Wouldn't it be better to make changes instead of voting on the whole budget? Not passing a budget on one issue is kind of, I mean, we got a lot of important things in here, and to vote against the budget, if you have an issue with one item, that's what we need to deal with tonight.
Yeah, you can still direct City Hall to research the issue and come back with the facts and the figures. You don't really need that in the budget to do that. You just tell us that's what you want to do. So you could, depending on what information comes back in 3 months, 4 months, you can make that decision. That's a simple budget adjustment. You could have the facts, you can see what the use tax is doing and go down that particular path. This is terrible for me to say, but I'm going to say it anyway. If you include it, and let's say we don't get good information, we get $65,000 or $70,000 cost, some of you are going to howl at the moon because you're not going to want to take it out. You're going to say, but it was in a budget. It was in a budget. So, for what it's worth. Marie?
To be fair, does that not work the other way as well? We'll not have it in the budget and we'll come back with a bid. Either way, we have to discuss it, we have to approve it again based on actual information. And we talked last week about this being a placeholder. So I actually appreciate John's point that even if we approve the budget as it is written in this iteration, we still have opportunity to change it. Either way, it works both ways.
Christine, the end?
I want to make a point here. Are we telling all Rolla residents that they need to whip out their phone and be videoing our officers for every interaction that they have to keep themselves safe? Because part of public safety is keeping the public safe from our bad apples, and we have seen that. And the video that's going around online right now is not of the officer who was recently fired. The videos I get sent were not of that officer. So are we telling the public that in every interaction that they have with the police that they need to film for themselves? Because if that's what we're telling them, then we need to be clear that's what we're telling them. So for city leadership, what are we telling the public? That we are going to protect them by providing body cameras, or that they need to protect themselves? It's one or the other here. And to Marie's point, again, thank you for bringing up what John said, which is what I asked last meeting we had. We can move this funding around at any point in time, just like we did with the training funds. We move that around to do helmets instead. We can move funding around whenever we want. And I think we need to keep it at the $45,000 right now, especially considering what's been happening lately in Rolla.
Carolyn?
Again, what is the price for one body camera and sustaining it for year after year after year?
Short answer is we don't know. If you want the latest approximation, it's $150 per person per month. And it's a lease, so we keep talking about buying body cameras. We're not buying body cameras, we're leasing them.
Yeah.
Under, I believe I think the initial proposal was 5-year lease or something like that.
Thank you.
Matthew?
Mayor, I move that we amend the budget as written to reduce the amount from $45,000 to $25,000 as originally suggested by our administration, after consultation with council.
Second.
There's a motion, a second. Any questions?
I have some discussion I'd like to do.
Go ahead. More?
I'm just trying to find where I access this key card. Stephanie, would you know how to do that?
Can you give us a preview or
I'll
a
give you a
trailer
preview.
of what
Okay.
we're going to look at?
So you are going to look at video footage from a recent incident in Rolla. Someone called the police because there was a domestic incident, I believe, between two younger folks, students potentially. I want to make sure it's muted. It's muted. Should be muted there. Okay. Yeah. Okay. I think I got it now, Stephanie. Yes, that one.
Before we show this,
Yeah.
what is the source? I want to be cautious
You'll
here.
recognize that it's Rolla. You'll recognize the spot.
That's not
So
my
at least you'll know that.
question. Lance, would you know where I'm headed?
Yes, I do, and I think that this is a horribly bad idea to ask
This is public. This is public. Other
I understand that, but if we show it and then there's going to be comment on it,
Right.
and then we get a lawsuit,
Right.
and I'm defending it, and I've already had my client telling everybody what they think of it, just hand me over an open checkbook because I'm writing a
Okay, so I
good
think we're
check.
making, Lance is making my
I don't
point.
know how to.
Lance is making my point. There is footage from a cell phone video, because we actually don't have the body cam video, that might be setting us up for a lawsuit. And right now we're saying, nah, body cameras don't matter. We don't need the footage ourselves to be able to prove anything. We don't need the body cameras. That's the point I'm making right here. I'd like to show it. And this is public. This isn't anything. And so here's the narrative that I understand. That someone called, in fact, there was a domestic dispute, and a male friend, it was a male and a female, a male friend was at the incident, called the police. Hey, we've got some issues here. Can you come? He's outside, and when the police show up, that person who called the police is tackled to the ground. So let me show you that.
Time out. Don't hit.
Hey, Dave.
Cut that
Okay,
off.
hold on.
Dave, Dave.
Cut that off, please.
I don't know how to cut it off.
Stephanie, cut the damn thing off until we decide that we're going to see this video.
Excuse me.
Okay, cut it off.
you.
I didn't know how to cut it off. It's on the screen.
Can you ask?
So my point here is, here's the point. Where is the body camera footage to show what happened from the officer's perspective when he rolled up? Where's the dash cam footage? It doesn't exist because we don't have any of those things. There's no way for the city to be able to have their own narrative on this, because all we have is video footage from someone's cell phone. This is exactly case in point of why we need the body cameras, so that there is accountability and there is understanding of what is going on in these situations.
And we don't have the cameras because we don't have the money
This is
right
the
now.
discussion about the motion.
We do have the money.
No, we don't. Not
About
at all.
reducing it to 20, I'm just
Yeah.
to make sure.
There was a motion and there's a second, and we're in the question and
All right,
discussion
great.
phase.
So this, okay, we'll do that, okay.
So is there any other discussion or question?
Mayor, I'd like to say that my motion still allows for body cameras. It's just to do it in a more, I believe,
Conservative.
conservative and in a manner in which we can evaluate the usefulness of the various products out there without forcing the city to spend $45,000 every year for the next 5 years.
Okay, if there's no other question, there's a motion and a second.
Can we restate the motion so we know what we're voting
Matthew?
on?
Yes, I move that we amend the budget as written to reduce the amount set aside for body cameras from $45,000 to the amount that was originally set of $25,000, and as was recommended by administration after discussion with council.
Carol, roll call vote, and let's remember the two that are remote.
Pardon me?
I says roll call vote, since that motion was seconded, and don't forget the two that are remote.
Correct. Okay. Lyons? Lyons? Does she not hear me?
She wrote no.
I think she's trying to talk, but it's not coming through.
Yeah, she noted on the bottom of the chat.
I'm sorry.
I think
They wrote
She
no.
voted no. Thank you. We got it.
I think we lost audio with them.
There it is.
She
Is that a
she
ye-
did
yes or
chat
no?
for no.
Dan, can you hear us? Okay.
Christine?
You sent a message for a no vote. Is that correct? If you nod your head, put your hand up? Yes, okay, so that's a
It's
no.
no, okay. Allen,
No.
Murphy,
Yes.
Bolin,
Yes.
Schneider,
No.
Florence,
Yes.
Mush,
Yes.
Higgins,
No.
Eberly,
Yes.
Crow,
Yes.
Schott,
No.
Reuter. Yes. Is that a yes?
It's a yes?
Okay, thank you.
If you can ask them to speak again, and I've got the volume turned back up, I just, without knowing how loud to make it.
7 ayes and 5 nays.
Yes.
So the motion to adjust the budget was approved?
7-5.
Okay. Lance, you?
Would you ask Christine to speak one more time?
Yes. Can you hear me? All right, thank you.
Okay. Moving on to,
First reading.
oh, that's right, first reading, thank you. Good job, you ought to sit there more. That hurts.
We can't, yeah, you're all right.
Are you ready?
Reading.
An ordinance adopting an annual budget for the fiscal year beginning on October 1, 2020, and appropriating funds pursuant thereto.
Next section is acknowledgements and special presentations. We have one tonight, a proclamation. Proclamations are usually given for some significant contribution, but sometimes it's also given to bring attention to a particular important issue to the community. And tonight's proclamation consists of the latter. This is National Recovery Month. And we've had lots of discussions, and there's been very good articles in some of the local papers regarding substance abuse and all of the tragedy that is associated with that. The pathways out of substance abuse are many, and there's not one single answer. If there was, we wouldn't have the problem today. So the one I would like to bring to everyone's attention tonight, and I'd like to read it. Whereas, recovery from mental and substance use disorders, including co-occurring disorders, is an essential part of health and one's overall wellness. Whereas treatment and recovery services for mental and substance use disorders and co-occurring disorders is effective, and people can do recovery in our area and around the nation. Whereas addressing and overcoming mental and substance abuse disorders and co-occurring disorders is essential to achieving healthy lifestyles, both physically and emotionally. Whereas we must encourage relatives and friends of people with mental and substance use disorders and co-occurring disorders to implement preventive measures, recognizing the signs of a problem and encouraging those in need to help, seek appropriate treatment, and recovery support services. Whereas an estimated 18 drug or alcohol-related deaths were reported in Phelps County during 2017, with an increase from 5 drug-induced deaths in 2015 to 15 drug-induced deaths in 2017. Also, approximately 1,800 people were hospitalized either for mental health issues or alcohol drug use in Phelps County during 2017. Whereas to help people with lived experience achieve and sustain recovery, the U.S. Department of Health and Human Services, the Substance Abuse and Mental Health Services Administration, and the City of Rolla invite all residents of Rolla, Missouri to participate in National Recovery Month. I, Louis Magnitz, by virtue of the authority vested in me by the laws of the City of Rolla, do hereby proclaim the month of September 2020 as National Recovery Month. Here to accept the proclamation is Tuesday Florence. Tuesday is the Addiction Recovery Support Ministry Coordinator for the New Dimensional Christian Ministry, a local group that has been very active in helping with this particular area of society. So with that, Tuesday?
Sorry.
Get on over there. Get it for the gram.
Susie, thank you for all Would you like to say a few words about the programs?
Yes. Yes, I am the coordinator with, for National Recovery Month. National Recovery Month. I am the coordinator for National Recovery Month, our celebration here in Rolla, Missouri with New Dimensional Christian Ministry. We will be hosting that event via Zoom on September 25th, and it will be at 6:30. You can find that information on Facebook, New Dimensional Christian Ministry Facebook. We have a page there. But we're very excited not only about that, but we also have Project Heal, in which I am the coordinator and facilitator for our recovery support ministry groups, which we do via Zoom. So we have a lot of things going on right now. We're very passionate about this. And we certainly know that there's a need for it. There's a lot of people hurting, and we are here to help. Project Heal stands for hope, encouragement, acceptance, and love. And that's what we're here to do. Thank you.
Thank you. Reports from boards and commissions. There are 11 reports listed. Are there any questions on any of them? If not, moving on to old business. First is an ordinance to amend Section 30-16 marijuana possession. John?
Mayor, this is the final reading of an ordinance that the council took up on August 17th that basically removes the jail time potential penalty on marijuana possession, which in municipal court falls under 35 grams. Council's had a few occasions to discuss this. The council voted to retain the fines of $100 for under 10 grams in a first-time offender and up to $500 for possession charges under 35 grams. But as suggested or mentioned, this ordinance does strike the jail provision of Section 30-16 of the Rolla City Code.
Questions from council? Carolyn?
I have one. I didn't see it in here. Is there an age limit to buy marijuana?
Medical or non-medical?
Actually, both.
Maybe and no.
Thank you.
I don't know what the provisions are for medical.
I believe any person can have it. A child sometimes needs it for seizures, those kinds of things. So I think any patient could get it, just like a patient could get any kind of medicine for any other condition at the hospital. You can look into it, but I'm pretty sure that like children are using it if necessary for a condition.
I can't answer it from that direction, but I can get it coming from the other direction.
Okay.
You can't charge someone with a criminal offense if they're under the age of 17, unless they're adjudicated as an adult. So the ordinances that you are creating here are for 17-year-olds and above.
Okay, thank you.
Any other questions? If there are none, so final reading.
An ordinance amending section 30-16 of the Code of the City of Rolla, Missouri relating to marijuana possession.
A motion to approve?
Second.
Motion made and second, roll call vote.
Mush,
No.
Schott,
Yes.
Reuter,
Yeah.
one for yes. Okay. Schneider,
Yes?
Allen,
Yes.
Murphy,
Yes.
Lyons,
Yes.
Crow,
Yes.
Florence,
Yay.
Higgins,
Yes.
Eberly,
Yes.
Bolin,
No.
10 ayes and 2 nays.
Thank you. Next item is an ordinance approving a minor subdivision plat of West Side Marketplace. Tom?
All right, just very quickly, since this is the final reading, you said this is a minor subdivision. Basically, this is a property transaction between the city and the co-applicant. Basically, the property in red is surrounds the entire properties. The square in blue would be the how things will look after this is done, and then the green lines in between the blue lines are what the applicant, the co-applicant owns now. So this would kind of square up their property. That's basically what this is all about. The oddity on this one is that the co-applicant's property is not in the city limits. The two little pieces of property that the co-applicant would be buying would still be in the city limits, and so they would still be zoned C3, the highway commercial zoning district. This is a picture of the plat, shows you what it looks like. Just summarize, this would change the lot line between the two properties. That lot 2 is only partly within the city limits, but it does appear to be in compliance with all requirements. Planning and Zoning Commission did recommend approval, a vote of 7-0. Do you have any questions for me?
Any questions for Tom? If not, can we have the final reading?
An ordinance to approve the minor subdivision final plat of West Side Marketplace.
So moved.
Second.
Motion made and second, roll call vote.
Florence,
Yay.
Crow,
Yes.
Murphy,
Yes.
Schott,
Yes.
Schneider,
Yes?
Reuter,
Yes.
Allen,
Yes.
Higgins,
Yes.
Eberly,
Yes.
Lyons,
Yes.
Bolin,
Yes.
Mush,
Yes.
12 ayes.
Ordinance is approved. Moving on to new business, we have a consideration to extend the COVID return to work ordinance. John?
Our return to work ordinance was passed in June 1st, extended in July, and is currently set to retire or terminate tomorrow. So what you have before you is the existing language in the ordinance that was adopted in July. I have redlined, I think, some suggested changes if council wants to extend that. Council can certainly let this expire, and then we would simply, much like the state of Missouri, fall under a entirely voluntary compliance program. Our ordinance is not an overly firm or strong ordinance. It still requires personal care attendants, servers, bartenders, those kinds of positions to so wear masks. Everything else is proposed as keeping the same language, and the council can, of course, change this to make it a more restrictive ordinance at this point. But we're going to present this for council consideration, and you have the authority to do a first and final reading if you wish to extend it or modify it tonight.
I was going to give a COVID update later in the meeting, but this may be a more appropriate spot. So COVID team we had our semi-weekly phone call today, and as of today, total Phelps County cases number 282, of which 64 are currently active. That 64 includes 28 that's associated with the MS&T campus. We have no currently in the hospital for COVID. The current positive test rate is still rather elevated, and it's just over 12%. While a positive test rate is considered a leading indicator with hospital admissions, a metric that would address the seriousness of the illness. So far, our cases are climbing, but we seem to be, very fortunately, not having a lot of people that are very, very sick. John, just to round out the discussions, do you want to talk about DED?
Yeah, we were contacted maybe 10 days ago by the Department of Economic Development. They had gotten some CARES funding to specifically target community-based as an employment factor. So it involves just the overall health of the community. And Rolla was selected. The location's going to be Lions Club. They've identified over the next at least 3 months, probably 4 months, for consecutive day testing that they'll be doing in partnership with the National Guard. Those dates are planned to be September 30th and October 28th. We'll be hearing more about that. They'll do somewhere around 300 tests on those days. And it's similar to the test that you might have recalled maybe 2 months ago, that it was not if you're symptomatic, come by. It's not if you're feeling poorly. It's just if you're interested, come by. No cost. State of Missouri is going to pick that up under this CARES Act program, and a chance to assess, again, the community, the overall community health in a more randomly selected process.
Thank you, John. So, opening the discussions, what is council's preference on the existing ordinance?
What kind of testing?
The one with DED, it's the full, it'll be the, I think the nasal
The full
testing.
nasal one?
Yeah.
No.
The not fun one?
Yeah, the fun one.
Ann?
It was reported today that Missouri has underreported a considerable number of cases of COVID and a considerable number of deaths. Apparently, there's different messaging, but some people have not been tested, but they've died, and that was suspected. But no, that's just kind of an open field right there. They may never know how many people in Missouri are actually truly infected with COVID, have been infected, or have died accurately. With the positivity rate being greater than 10%, it's, it's, in my mind, it's not a good thing to withhold, pull back on restrictions. If anything, I would say continue until at least the end of this first semester.
Rachel, do you have your hand up?
Yes, I did. Because I wanted to, in thinking about what an end date for this ordinance, if we pass it, would be, because I know you mentioned at the last meeting, and also that you mentioned here in the description that you guys, that the COVID team was working on, perhaps a key metric related to hospitalizations. Is that the kind of thing we would expect to be developed within a month, 2 months? Because for instance, if it, I guess we could revise the ordinance whenever, based on what you guys come up with, but I was thinking in terms of what kind of end date we would want for this.
Well, the purpose of that metric, and it seems to be just as elusive today as it did 3 months ago.
Okay.
Getting, enough consistency on that particular metric. And I think that metric serves as sort of a base for a series of progressive. So I don't think the community is accepting of a very, very restrictive ordinance, for instance, that we had in the beginning. So the idea, what we're thinking about, is a progressive set of metrics and restrictions, if we want to do that, just in case. So I don't think that our thought here at City Hall is to get this and say, oh, folks, this is what we need today. It's really to have it ready on the shelf for when you want to choose to act.
Okay.
We also want to have the community start to think about it and start to see and sort of connect the dots that, okay, we can do certain things and mitigate the result with the impact today, but boy, if we get people in the hospital and we get people dying, we all need to kind of get our act together type of thing. So that's kind of where we're trying to get to. But I think that's sort of independent of this ordinance.
Okay.
And the only reason I say that is, we don't have something that's very restrictive here.
No.
I mean, we basically have a lot of guidelines with only a few restrictions on waiters, waitresses, personal care providers. Is that it, John?
Yeah, pretty much.
That's basically it. Sort of the obvious ones.
Mhm.
So I think what council wants to do regarding extending that should be viewed independently of what we're working
Okay.
on, just in case.
All right, that makes a lot of sense.
Lister?
I move that we extend the ordinances as modified.
I'll second.
We'll need a date.
I thought I had it under to the July, to the December.
Yeah, December 31st.
Yeah, that's what
Well,
I
for
know.
the state of
And I-
emergency, but not.
I should have
the-
clarified
Yeah,
that. Yeah, so we did leave the actual termination of the order blank, and then we're proposing that the declaration of emergency through December
Oh.
31st. You can certainly do it all through December 31st, just to, so you have the calendar dates. November 17th would follow the second meeting in November, and December 8th would follow the first meeting in December, if you're looking something sooner than the end of the year.
Mayor.
And I assume, John, that we would, hold on one second. I'm assuming we would actually, so that we're not asking council to do first and final reading, we would actually be bringing it back to them 2 weeks in advance, as opposed to what we're doing now.
Correct.
Okay, thank you. Yes,
Christine.
Christine or Deanne?
Yeah. So as you brought up, you've been talking about, we're coming up with some metrics for several months now. I mean, how long do we need to be waiting for the metrics on this is what's going to trigger, what needs to happen? As you said, we're 12%. I know that Jefferson County, I just saw in the news earlier, and I know they're a lot more populous than we are in Phelps, but they just were determined to be a red zone, and they don't have any masking required in their county at all. I think that, I know that a lot of our businesses are having problems with people complying with stores requiring masks at the doors. Even when the signage specifically states you will wear a mask walking in here. I've been in 3 different stores with that signage, and our ordinance only covers the employees. It's not covering the people walking in the doors, but their signage covers the people walking in the doors. And there have been 3 that I've been in the past week where people are just ignoring their signage. And I think that having something in place with masking is essential at this point, as our numbers have really exponentially risen in the past couple of weeks.
Good question and observation, Christine. Look, hold on. At City Hall, we are not experts in this particular subject matter by any stretch of the imagination. So we're relying on various professionals within, I will say, the general healthcare profession, for guidance. I think we're trying to get a consensus opinion as well. Let's be brutally honest. This community does not, at least to date, have a consensus on what to do with COVID. We've got people in every bucket that you've heard me describe before. So what we're really talking about in that what-if scenario would likely to be significant restrictions. So if we can't really all agree on the minor ones, it doesn't give us much hope that the other one will be any easier to do. The other thing, without putting them in a tough spot, is, look, when you go to the healthcare providers, and I don't care which one you go to, you're going to get their recommendations, and you're not going to like them, because they are very restrictive. If you ask them privately as a doctor, as a nurse, and so on and so forth, they're going to tell you what they think works. Put everybody in a mask for 4 weeks. That's what we were told when we asked the question. Obviously, we have to balance that with what the community wants to do. So We are working on it. I would love to tell you we can come back in a week, but I think I would be over-promising.
But we are really zeroing in on the hospitalization.
On the hospitalization, yeah.
Because if you look at the numbers, and the health department's done a really great job presenting that information, we've got a lot of young people that are getting this, and they're getting it very asymptomatically or with very minor symptoms. And so I think even the double-digit positive test, which a month ago was a key indicator, seems to be a less of an indicator today because so few people are experiencing serious medical conditions as a result of it. So the hospitalization seems to be the one in our conversations with Ed Clayton at Phelps Health that we really want to focus on, and we're really working with them as they work through their own internal controls of what they do at their facility in light of hospitalization.
Right, but we want a consensus. We don't want to just drop this on Ed Clayton's doorstep and say, figure it out for us. So we want to be cognizant of that as well. Ann?
I just wanted to add.
Hold on, Christine, go ahead.
As I said back, I believe it was in July, if we're waiting for hospitalizations as a trigger point, then that's being more reactive, and I think we need to be proactive at this point. We don't want this virus to get any worse, and there are things that we can do. As you said, mask wearing 4 weeks can cut the number dramatically. We want to keep our kids in school. We want S&T to continue to be able to have their classes and the students to be here in the community because their dollars are important. We want to keep people in work. To do that, masking is important. I think we need to be proactive and not reactive.
Yeah, Christine, I think, and council has the prerogative to take a much more proactive posture. You can do it today. Again, what we're working on, I don't think I would call it reactive. I think it's actually proactive because we're looking at a series of steps to implement as things happen, but before they go out of control, so to speak. So don't focus on the numbers, but use this as an example. Let's say the hospital has the capacity to treat 50 people. They have 50 ICU beds, as an example. There's a certain amount that I think that they would want to have available for everyday unfortunate occurrences, heart attacks and strokes and all those sorts of things. So if 50 is their capacity, then you reduce that by whatever level of comfort they feel that they could still service the community. And then under that, you would probably have several steps. So hypothetically, we might at 10 hospitalizations say, okay, it's time to ratchet up the restrictions under some circumstance. At 20, there's another level of restrictions, and at 30, there's another one. And again, just for example purposes here. So we are trying to be proactive to prevent the overwhelming of the local healthcare system. But that's not an easy number to get to or to have a consensus in the community. But back to your original point, if you want to be very proactive about the spread of COVID in the community, then yes, you have the ability right here, right now, to change this ordinance if you want it. You can put more restrictions in, you can put less. You can keep what you have, or you can extend it. It's your call.
Ann? Again, with students back in school, college, elementary, the risk of transmission is greatly increased. Now, children may not have the effects, young adults may not have terrible effects. They may, they'll get sick potentially. Everybody doesn't get sick. It's a crapshoot, okay? And the Fed, the chairman of the Fed today said, the only way the economy is going to get better is if the pandemic is controlled. And he basically went back to the cardinal three things: wash your hands, maintain some distance between you and others, and wear a mask. Thank you.
Rachel?
Yeah, just to go back to the ordinance itself, and we were contemplating a date. I know Ann suggested something at the end of the year. I think that it's been successful to have a ending date that occurs after a meeting, right? So if the first meeting is in December is December 8th, it seems reasonable to extend it then to December 9th, because then we'll kind of be towards the end of the semester and be able to look at where we are.
Do 2 weeks. So we don't do what we're asking you to tonight, is have the
Okay.
first and second reading. So give yourself 2 weeks after a particular meeting.
Okay, so you would say the second meeting in December then, which would be
The 21st is the.
the day
Second.
after would be the 21st?
No, day after would be the 22nd.
All right, day after would be the 22nd. Yeah, that'll get us through the semester. I think at this point, we really can't go any looser than where we're at, just based on the occurrences we're seeing. We don't know what the long-term effects are going to be, or the spread at S&T. I know the students have been doing a very good job wearing masks on campus, but, you know, exposure over time, this is what seems to trigger the infections most closely. So, yeah, I'd like to propose, I guess, an amendment that would put this change under Section 1 will continue through December 22nd, 2020.
Is that in the form of a motion, Rachel?
That is a motion.
Okay.
Second.
It's a motion and a second. Council comment? If there are none, first reading, please.
An ordinance amending ordinance number 4567 in the city of Rolla, Missouri, allowing all businesses to remain open within the city of Rolla with proper safeguards.
No, let's clarify, it's important. Would you restate your motion? Oh, sorry.
Yes, I would like to make a motion to amend the proposed ordinance to change the language in Section 1 so that it reads, "The rules and regulations contained in this order shall be effective 6 a.m. on Wednesday, September 9th, and will continue through, I guess, Tuesday, December 22nd, 2020." Is that clear enough?
Yep. Jody, you had a question?
No, go ahead and finish what you were doing with.
Well, no, I was just
Because
asking
I was going to make a motion to suspend the rules.
Second.
Motion made and second. All in favor, say aye. Deanna, Christine, if you raise your hands.
Wait, do we need to amend and then?
Kurt, I don't think we took a vote on the motion in the second. To set the date, so we need to do that by motion.
We just leaped ahead.
There was a motion, I don't remember who seconded it.
Marie seconded it.
Marie seconded it, so we just need a vote to set that date in the ordinance for the first reading.
Okay, so there's a motion and there's a second. Let's do this by roll call.
Roll call. Higgins,
Yes.
Boland,
Yes.
Reuter,
Yes.
Schneider,
Yes?
Allen,
Yes.
Murphy,
Yes.
Lyons, Crowell,
Yes.
Yes.
Mush,
Yes.
Florence,
Yay.
Eberly,
Yes.
Schott,
Yes.
12 ayes.
Now we can have the motion to suspend.
So moved.
Second.
All in favor, say aye.
Aye.
Christine, Deanne, could you raise your hand? If it's a yes or no? Okay. Final reading.
An ordinance amending ordinance number 4567 in the city of Rolla, Missouri, allowing all businesses to remain open within the city of Rolla with proper safeguards.
Move the ordinance be approved.
Second.
Motion made and second. Roll call vote.
Allen,
Yes.
Lyons,
Yes.
Murphy,
Yes.
Boland,
Yes.
Schneider,
Yes?
Reuter,
Yes.
Mush,
Yes.
Florence,
Yay.
Eberly,
Yes.
Crowell,
Yes.
Schott,
Yes.
Higgins,
Yes.
12 ayes.
Ordinance is approved. Thank you. We do not have any claims and/or fiscal transactions. Citizen communication. If there's anyone that would like to speak, I would ask. I guess, ladies, I'm going to kind of look at you on this. Council has two other things tonight that'll probably take some time, so if you have new information vis-à-vis what you've been presenting the last couple of meetings, by all means, present it. If it's just sort of the same old, and just an update, then I would ask if you can hold off for a week or 2 weeks, but I leave it to you.
We created a packet to hand out because.
That's fine.
Just packet of paper.
That's fine.
To hand out to everybody, if that's okay.
That's fine. So you just want to present it to council now for their reading later?
Absolutely.
Yeah, please, thank you.
So we just have like a packet just showing you guys the pictures from some of our cleanups. And then we just wanted to make sure everybody has a chance to, be re-invited out to our next couple cleanups that are happening on this, 15th or 16th, I believe, and then the 26th. For those that we haven't had a response yet, we'll just make sure to send out emails again, because we definitely want to hit everybody's spots that they can.
Okay, thank you. We appreciate what you're doing in the area, and we also appreciate tonight with the packet as opposed to a presentation given us. So, yeah, thank you very much. We appreciate it. Jim, name and address for the record. You can just give me a street.
Just give you my street,
Yeah, we don't need your house number.
Bill Avenue. I want to commend the chief on a fire that happened behind our house on a residential on Hutchinson. They, real quick, they were there, bam. So, but anyway, this is why I'm here. Real reason. Child endangerment. Basketball hoops out in the street and on the curb. You voted it in and said it was good, safe, you can have it. Child endangerment. That ordinance needs to be changed.
Do we, let me make sure I understand it. So these are basketball poles somebody's putting on by the curb?
On the curb and also in the street.
Okay, so I guess I didn't realize that that was allowed.
I didn't realize it was either.
It is allowed. You all made it allowed. Here a few years back.
We'll look at that. We're actually working on a new court for that area.
We got a
Place one in
court.
Green.
Yeah, you live in
Yeah.
Green Acres, right?
Not too far.
Yeah, we've
I've been
decommissioned the one in
built-
Green Acres, and we're looking at putting one even closer to that area, so. But
Yeah.
we'll look at the ordinance, I just don't recall that that was done
Yeah,
recently.
I don't remember ever talking about it, actually.
But,
Okay,
then there's something else. I can't remember what it is. I'm old. Oh.
No.
I got oh yeah, I'm old. I got tickets for dropping my trailers out in the street unattached off my vehicle. We got a cargo trailer on Bill Avenue. He drops his trailer in this cargo trailer. Same guy's got a basketball hoop.
overnight, because I know we have ordinances
yeah,
on
it's
overnight.
overnight.
Did John or
It'll be
Chief, do
there
you
for
want to
days.
elaborate on that one?
No, we'll look at it.
It's a
If it's there-
16-foot trailer, cargo trailer.
Yeah, not allowed overnight.
So, but anyway, we got one basketball off, hoop off, because my neighbor's a friend of his, of theirs. As soon as I mentioned child endangerment, he took his off the street and took it down, period. But if they got a driveway, I don't care if it's 20 foot, put it in the driveway. You got a carport, put it under the carport. Don't fit, put it in the backyard. Don't put it down in the street, because they were out there playing. My son-in-law come around the corner, and they wouldn't get out of the street. Kids, parents allowing them to do it. They called the police on him. Police talked to him, and he told them what happened. Believe me, they got chewed out by the police, kids. So, but anyway, please take care of the matter. Thank you.
Thank you.
Yes, sir.
Any other citizen communication? Alyssa?
Thank you for your time. This is actually why I came here this evening. It is rare that I get to come to a council meeting, so Tuesday nights are fantastic for my schedule. I just want to thank each and every one of you for your service. It has been an incredibly tough year, a lot of tough decisions to be made, but I hear, Lister and Dan referencing their constituents' concerns. Jody, I know you've voted against your own conscience to keep your constituents happy. Matthew, always with something intelligent. Dave, bringing, even with all these big issues, reminding people to mow their lawns and their neighbors' lawns. And Anne has a high pedestrian traffic, and she wants attention called to that. And all those little things are what makes Rolla great. And I'm very proud to live here. So thank you all for serving in such a trying year.
Thank you. Alyssa, you can come back for every meeting. Is there a motion to change the meetings till Tuesday? Thank you very much for that. Council persons, they seem to get criticism faster than they get compliments, so I'm sure each one of them appreciate it very much. Any other citizen communication? If not, mayor or council comments. We have some reappointments. The first is asking your approval to reappoint Mr. Steve Bowles to the Industrial Development Authority.
I'd like to make a motion.
Motion, is there a second?
Second.
All in favor, say aye.
Aye.
Okay, we got Deanne? Aye. Thank you for that. The second is a reappointment of Elizabeth Smith also to the Industrial Development Authority.
So moved.
Second?
Motion made in second. All in favor, say aye.
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 All opposed? Thank you.
No, that's not it.
I'm sorry?
Oh,
I'm sorry, okay. The next one is an appointment and not a reappointment, Ms. Megan Johnson to the Library Board. She is going to be taking the unexpired term of Dr. Sarah Marcus, who is the Chancellor's wife that moved away here a little bit while ago. Introduce her, Megan, raise your hand. So with your consent, I would like to appoint Megan to the Library Board.
So moved.
Second.
Motion made in second. All in favor, say aye.
Aye.
All opposed? Thank you. Follow-up discussion. So we've had a lot of discussions on marijuana. In the last meeting, there was sort of a wide range of topics that we were kicking around once again. We went back to the video to see exactly what the motions were and what they weren't, and let's just say the discussions were very fluid. So we have it on the agenda, and the idea is to basically take the discussion where you want to take it. I do have an opening statement to kind of kick it off, but this is your topic and your course of action. I'd like to begin with the end in mind, which means whatever course of action, I will request that we take a vote. If you're going to tell us to do a certain thing or to research a certain thing, I would like that to be representative of the council majority. So with that, here's my opening statement. Several weeks ago, I was speaking with somebody about our marijuana discussions over the past year. He was observing that it looked like the city was constantly chasing rabbits, and on the same day, I was complaining bitterly about my frustration with the most recent council meeting. In the end, he asked me a simple question. Where specifically are we trying to go? About 8 months ago, a citizens group expressed some concerns that our city ordinances for non-medicinal, small-time users of marijuana could include jail time. From a practical perspective, this type of sentence was not at all common, and total cases of non-medicinal, small-use marijuana are about 40 cases per year. Although jail time was not what our prosecuting attorney and judges practice, it was believed that even the potential of jail time for small users was not consistent with the views of our society today. Tonight, our ordinance changed that. What started out 8 months ago as a simple and achievable request has since taken us down many roads, all of which have been dead ends. We touched on decriminalization, sanctuary city designations, and most recently, deprioritization. We've gotten very close to suggesting how other elected officials should do their jobs. All of these conversations were based either on changing something we legally could not do, or asking our law enforcement personnel, in essence, to look the other way when it comes to enforcing existing laws. An awful lot of discussion has occurred with nothing to show for it other than a community that's growing quite tired of these discussions. So to go back to what the citizen asked me, where specifically are we trying to go? So with that, I turn it over to council.
I'm happy being done with it.
Second.
It's up to you. I'd like to hear from each one of you. Each one of you has an opinion on this matter. If you're going to ask us to do something, we would like to understand it clearly. We would suggest that it is something that is legal, so we don't keep wasting our time with certain things. So we'll do what you ask us to do. So I'm going to start with you, Rachel. What is it that you would like to do go forward, if anything?
I, right now, am comfortable with where we are and the actions we've taken tonight.
Okay. Terry?
I'm comfortable also.
Matthew?
The same.
Ann?
I have to agree. I think the prosecuting attorney having the discretion, I think there should be some fine initially, no jail, but recurring can't be an option either.
Lister?
Yeah, I like the idea that we've removed for small amounts, first-time offenders, jail time options, so I'm comfortable with what we've done.
David?
I'm not so comfortable. And I want to bring up a little story that kind of goes along with why I'm not so comfortable. The other day in my neighborhood, I woke up and my neighbor from across the street came over to me. And he said, "Hey, did you see the guy on the lawn sleeping on your lawn there earlier today at 6:30 a.m.?" And I said, "No, I didn't see him." He said, "Yeah, well, I went over to him and tapped him. He was sleeping there. And he kind of woke out of it, and he seemed like he was on some sort of drug beyond just waking up in a sleepy daze. And he also said that he was homeless." What, in this situation, can neighbors do? Well, we could call the police. They might arrest him for trespassing or remove them to another location. But it wouldn't really do anything to help the community solve the problem or help the homeless addicted person at the center of it. I felt sad when I realized there really isn't any place to call or refer this man to get help. At the same time, we have some Phelps County Focus articles recently that have highlighted the fentanyl problem, opioid problem in our community. They did a 2-part series by a whole bunch of doctors, and Missouri and our surrounding counties are some of the worst in the nation in terms of what's going on with opioids. What resources does our community have to deal with someone who needs housing, addiction recovery service, and often mental health services? I know that we have some organizations like CIT and all the partners they work with, and that's a great example of some of those services. But I know that we don't have enough resources. Addiction treatment for people without health care, like most homeless people, are just not available. We need more of these. One of the things the article quotes, and I think this is extremely important, I quote, "The social conditions that correlate with the increased use of illegal drugs, poverty, both rural and urban, unemployment, and homelessness are expected to persist and may get worse in the current pandemic." With the mayor's proclamation we heard earlier today, I think we need to look inside and see what we can do to help encourage filling the gap in essential services to help folks in these kinds of situations. Otherwise, the problem will only get worse. And I highlight this to shine some light on where our community is and where it may be going, because I don't think Rolla is different than a lot of other communities, but I do think with the pandemic, unemployment, homelessness, people losing jobs, et cetera, losing their income, we probably are going to see more of this kind of thing. And so I tie this in, and I wanted to highlight this anyway, but I also believe that this ties in to cannabis and the discussion we're having and deprioritization. And here's how it does. Cannabis users aren't the ones causing any disturbance or having issues in our neighborhoods. We see that highlighted right here. I mean, this is the opioids and fentanyl are the ones that are doing that. And I believe that deprioritization of cannabis is one step in putting more focus and more resources and efforts toward the real issues in our community, which are opioids, heroin, fentanyl, and methamphetamines. And I believe that every time that we're using our resources to write up a report for cannabis, or we're wasting the time that we could be putting it in effort to these issues. And I know that there aren't always law enforcement solutions. I don't believe that Chief Fagan and all the officers can solve the issues we have all this, but they are part of the solution with the CIT, and I just think that the time that needs to be spent and put toward these issues is really where we should be spending our time. And so what I would like to see is that our city attorneys research deprioritization and just give us a little bit of feedback on how other cities have done it and what's the legality of it and what that would mean about the way in which we ask our officers to prioritize or deprioritize certain things, and then the way in which that this body or another body could look over how our resources are spent, and that would give us a availability at the end of each year to confirm that we are prioritizing and deprioritizing the things that matter in our community.
Jody?
So I'm fairly comfortable with where we sit right now with the ordinance that we amended today. I think, as Dave said, we have long-term issues of social inequities that are going to need long-term solutions, and we can't do it all at once. I think we've made a start at looking at some of these things. I think the Rolla community does have some services, some resources, some people that are working to help solve some of these issues, but it's going to take time and it's going to take continued effort. The crisis intervention team, the mission, many of the other organizations, I think there is some help out there, but it's a big problem and it's going to take a concerted effort for a long period of time. I think we've, as a city, have addressed what we can address at this time in terms of the marijuana possession issues, and we just need to continue on working as best we can with the partners to look at the social conditions that need improvement over time.
Thank you. John?
Yeah, I'm satisfied with what we've accomplished.
Caroline?
I'm satisfied for now what we did, but David keeps bringing up opioids and fentanyl and other items. Marijuana is right along with them, and it will be if we try to become a sanctuary city. Marijuana is addictive just as much as anything else, and it's not to everybody. People have addictive personalities. It could be marijuana, it could be alcohol, it could be candy, whatever. That doesn't say that everybody is addictive to it, but it can be addictive. And I will never, ever vote for sanctuary city here. That would just tear Rolla apart. So we still have a long way to go, I think.
Bree?
Well, I think it seems clear that as a council, we have to be comfortable because we lack the will as a body to go much further than we've gone. But I want to say thank you to my colleagues because it seems like this has been a good compromise for some of you. You were terribly opposed to removing jail time, and we met in the middle, and so I appreciate that. And I also wanted to say that I appreciate and hope that my colleagues and the public has learned a little bit about the diversity of our citizens. And I have listened, I have learned, I have gotten to know some people that I didn't know before. And I just would like to emphasize that there's a larger percentage, a larger part of our population that is affected by this issue, that this issue is important to, than maybe some of us might have realized before. And so I appreciate the opportunity to listen and to learn about other perspectives. And I hope that we'll take those things to heart as we move forward. But I am comfortable with the ordinance.
Thank you, Marie. Those are very good observations, and I learned something along the way, too. Maybe not quite as much as some of you think I should have learned, but I did learn a lot along the way as well. Christine?
I'm comfortable with where we are right now. I think without state or federal actions, that to continue, we'd just be spinning our wheels at this point. So I'm comfortable with where we are.
Thank you. Deanne?
I agree with both Marie and Dave. I do think that we got to a point where people could open their minds up a little bit and listen to those who are directly impacted by this, to say that no, we're not going to do jail time and that we do need to keep talking about this. But to Dave's point, I do think that we need to keep discussing deprioritization moving forward, because we have a short-term solution right now, no jail time. But long-term solution, we don't have that. And by just dropping it and saying, nope, we're not going to talk about it anymore, that's not going to make that problem go away. So I'm satisfied with saying no jail time right now, but I'm not satisfied saying that this is the end. It's not the end. Our community's made that pretty clear. And I want to give a really big thank you to Rolla for doing all that they have on education. And not just education, they are in the streets cleaning up. They are in the streets cleaning up after hard drug users. They are in the streets cleaning up after those who are throwing their bottles of alcohol out. They're cleaning up glass. They're cleaning up cigarette butts. They're cleaning up all the things that none of us up here are really doing in our everyday lives. Are we on the streets doing that? Are we on the streets educating? Are we educating ourselves? Because they are. So thank you for teaching us and our community, and for being so vocal about this, because that's what gets things done. Direct action is what gets things done, and I am so proud of our community for realizing that, and realizing that the people are who have the power. Y'all get to tell us what to do. That's how it goes. So thank you for making us act on this, and thank you for making us think. And thank you for giving us something to look to in the future with deprioritization.
I'd like to make a motion to have our city's attorneys research deprioritization and give us what they find on the research.
Second.
Motion made in second. Council, questions or comments? Before we vote, this is just another rabbit hole. So, Lance, before we do a big study, how does deprioritization and decriminalization differ from, it's just to me another way of saying we're going to tell our police department to not enforce the laws? If I'm wrong, by all means, tell me I'm wrong.
So the first aspect of deprioritization is basically essentially a resolution saying that the city council does not want prosecution of marijuana to be a priority. It's a political statement. It's certainly a statement that the council can make, much like a statewide ballot issue. The overall impact of it, I don't I don't know that I can say that it's going to have, that in and of itself makes it a big impact, other than you have clearly made your statement that you don't want that to be a priority. The second aspect of deprioritization, as I understand it, is creating some form of committee to, or adding to an existing committee to evaluate what the impact of your statement would be on prosecution and law enforcement resources. Somebody to review whether or not those priorities are changing based off of the council statement. That's what deprioritization is, as I understand it. It's a group to, a statement from the council, and then somebody reviews to determine whether or not those rates are changing in accordance with priorities. It does not affect on individual cases.
But Lance, let's just assume we have a group of people to do this, and next year there's 40 cases where people were small-time users and got caught. And again, we're talking about non-medicinal, so we are talking still about an illegal drug. Like it or not, we can say it's not, but it technically is. So it's 40. Is this committee then going to come back and say, hey, chief, you're doing a bad job. You should only have 30 cases. And then a year later, it's 20 cases. Is that essentially what we're going to be telling our police department?
I honestly can't tell you that. As I said, it doesn't affect on an individual case basis. It's a committee to determine whether or not prioritization or deprioritization is taking effect. I don't know what those words mean, other than that's what the committee evaluates. So they'll make recommendations, but they're non-binding recommendations.
You're still inferring or telling the police not to do what they're supposed to be doing.
More or less.
Okay, all right. John?
Yeah, I guess it concerns me a little bit. You know, we're all adults. We understand the importance of our actions. But what kind of message are we sending to the youth in our community that even though non-medicinal marijuana is illegal, and if you're a young person, I think we have to be careful the message we're sending to the youth in our community. I really have a hard time telling the kids in the high school that they can't get in trouble we believe that it's not an issue for them to use something that is considered illegal. And I think it's also not fair that we're telling them that, but yet they can still get arrested for it. So I think we need to think about that too.
Council comments?
When it comes to the message that we're sending youth, I want to be really clear that there are people who had to move across the country to the first state to ever go medical so that their child would stop having seizures, so that their child would stop having health issues. When we're sending a message to children, we should be sending that this is a safe alternative. But that's not what we're sending the message to children, and I do know because I was a teacher in our local schools. I know exactly what we're telling children. And if we're going to talk about what message we're sending to children, and I want to be really clear here, I loved my time at SNT, wouldn't change it. I would have gone back. I liked being a student there. But when it comes to St. Pat's, what message are we sending to children? we'll happily take everybody's money every year, year after year, because we get a full week and a half of just getting drunk in the streets, of underage drinking in the streets, of a parade of drinking in the streets, and we'll do that all together, throwing candy at kids while we're drunk in the streets? Is that the message we send to children that's okay? Because if that's the message that we're sending to children, I mean, we could do this all day, what message we're sending to kids. We disagree on cannabis. I think that there's a way to educate about it in an age-appropriate way, just like I do with every topic, really. Kids are curious, and when they ask questions, if it's mentionable, it's manageable, just like Mr. Rogers used to say. So if it's mentionable and it's been mentioned in our community, then it's manageable, and that's our job as leadership to manage it. And saying we don't know these words and we don't know these definitions, that's not good enough, because it's our job to know the words and it's our job to look up the definitions, and it's our job to do these things for the people who are telling us to do it. They have the power. They are the voters. They are our constituents. And they do have children, and they teach their children. We need to trust that our constituents can teach their children. And if, again, we're going to talk about what's safe for kids to see, we are more than happy year after year to take in the millions of dollars that St. Pat's brings, but we don't want to talk about alcoholism, and we don't want to talk about the negative side effects of alcohol that we see in our community year after year when it comes to St. Pat's. And again, I love S&T. I was a St. Pat's Queen candidate during my time there. I participated in the games. I had a really good time. I loved it. And I don't even drink anymore. But we can't talk about one type of drug as being this boogeyman for children in our community and then not talk about all the rest. And we celebrate that year after year in our community. So let's be mindful about what we're talking about, and let's not use children as a scapegoat.
I'm just going to piggyback on that real quick, which is that I think that we might actually be sending the wrong message by letting children think that marijuana is in the same class as opioid, fentanyl, heroin, methamphetamines. I think that might be giving a worse message than anything, too. So I think that, like Deanne said, we need to look at what messaging is going out and if we're actually giving the proper messaging.
It's okay to compare and contrast pot with opioids. I get it. But let's be honest. There's a whole lot of people in this community that will come here and tell you that marijuana is also a gateway drug. It's an off-ramp for some people. It's an on-ramp for some people. So if this was an easy thing to decide, there'd have been a whole lot of people before us that would have figured this out.
I've got another point.
But again, I want to come back to this point. Do we want to continue to talk about these things? We'll do the research. But again, to me, it's another rabbit hole, because we're still operating in those confines that says we have certain legal authority, and like it or not, this is an illegal drug above a certain level or beyond a certain use. So I think what I find frustrating is that just one thing after another. It was decriminalization, and then that didn't work. And then it was sanctuary city, and that didn't work. And then it was this, and that didn't work. And now deprioritization is the word of the day. And when the answer comes back on that one, we'll find another word to go to the community with.
That's kind of the whole point, Mr. Mayor. It's like we try, we fail, so we try again and we fail better. I told that to my students all the time in the classroom. When you fail, you try again, and you try harder next time. That's what we're trying to do. We're trying to get a solution for the people.
That's fine.
And the solutions we've brought you, we've been told no. We've been told that won't work. And so we come to you with new ideas. That's what I thought we were supposed to be doing, coming up with new ideas and coming up with a way to get this done so that it gets done. Being told no repeatedly, well, I have to find a new way to do it. That's kind of like the whole scientific method as well. when I was working in a lab and I had an experiment not work, I didn't just give up and say, well, that's frustrating, that's the end. No, I had to try again and again and again, repeatedly. Students at S&T will tell you that all day long. We try again, we fail, and we fail better. We'll do it again and again and again. And I think the community wants that to be done. They are coming to us repeatedly over this. And they're showing up at the meetings repeatedly. We've seen this. We know it's not going to go away. So yes, if you tell us no, that won't work, then we will say, okay, then we'll find a way that will. That's our job.
I don't disagree with you, Deanne. Having an advanced degree in chemistry, yeah, I know what the scientific method is too. I think you've got to be cognizant where we keep talking about the community wanting this. The cold, hard reality of it is it's a segment of the community that wants you to keep going. I don't know if it's 10% of the population. I don't know if it's 20% of the population, but I'd be willing to bet a paycheck that it's not over 50% of the population that's wanting this body to go down this path. So that's a perspective I think all of you have to have as well.
I do think we want to have, I think we have one of the higher numbers of card holders in the state. You'd probably have to ask, I want to say Daniel Jones probably, but
Oh, there's an expert.
I think the work that he and the community did on that put Rolla on the map for Missouri as being one of the main places for having card holders per population. I could be wrong on that, but I just want to make it clear that I think it might be you who's mistaken on how much of the community wants this or doesn't want it.
This discussion is not about medicinal marijuana. I couldn't care less if 5,000 people in Rolla had a medical marijuana card. Great, go out and get them. These discussions you're having are not about medical marijuana. They are about users that are using an illegal drug. That's what you want us to change. It's not about medical marijuana.
Well, one of the things that I think is important to mention here is we've talked about it, and I hate to repeat myself. I know folks here don't like me to repeat myself, but it doesn't seem to sink in. We had a huge discussion about there's a large number of people that might like to get their card, but the city of Rolla, for example, can't do it. There might be someone with an ailment they'd rather get off the prescription drugs that they are killing them. They can't get it where they're not allowed to here. Neither are they at any other federal agency in town. So this is where the deprioritization comes in. They might still need medicine, and we should not, in the sight of justice, we should not be giving them trouble over a plant that's helping them with whatever ailments they do have. And I think that's the missing component of what you're saying. So there's a lot of people in our community that would like to get their card but can't.
Do the motion.
Lister?
Yeah, I call for question.
Okay.
Let's just vote no more matter.
Okay, there's a motion. David, please repeat your motion. If you want us to do something as a body or a city hall, be specific so again, we're not wasting our time with something that's ambiguous.
I'd like our city attorneys to research deprioritization. If there are other cities that have done that, how they've done it, what's the accountability they use, how it's used within the police department, all the facets that you kind of talked about and asked our city attorney today, but the full breadth and width of what that is in terms of every aspect that you asked, going in and getting the information so that we at least have it in front of us.
There was a second, which I think was Deanne? Okay, roll call vote.
Corral,
No.
Schott,
Yes.
Reuter,
No.
Schneider,
Yes.
Higgins,
Yes.
Murphy,
No.
Lyons,
Yes.
Bolin,
No.
Mush,
No.
Florence,
No.
Eberly,
No.
Allen,
Yes.
five ayes and 7 nays.
Say that, what was it again?
Five yes, 7 no.
Okay. Any other council discussion on the matter? Any other council comments on any other topic?
I have one.
Marie?
John, I'm sure that you, over the years, have probably got tired of talking about this, but I've had another email from someone who lives over near the old AutoZone property with lots of photos, including some fire hydrants that are covered up, and just, I know there are some special issues related to those particular properties, and it comes up once every couple of years in town, but just for the benefit of the public and my constituent in particular, could you speak to the condition of those properties and what authority the city has or does not have, just to sum up?
Yeah, and we're talking about the Dean property, I'm sure, at 72 and 63. The city does have a lot of authority. The city has the ability to declare something a nuisance and to order a nuisance to be abated. The problem with that particular property, depending on how far we were to go with the condition of the buildings and all, we could be looking at hundreds and hundreds of thousands of dollars for a demolition cleanup. If it's the grass issue on the perimeter, 5 to 10 feet off the curb, that is required to be maintained. And Kathleen is consistently following up with the Dean family. They do have a company in town that maintains that right-of-way, and if that gets bad, we need to be reporting that and turning that in. So I'll have Kathleen look at it again. I know that they just had that conversation a couple of weeks ago, so I'm surprised that it's not cut. Now, it's not going to be the overall area. There was a court resolution probably 30 years ago on the balance of that property, and nevertheless, it doesn't exclude them from the properties along Williams Road and Rucker or whatever that side street is. So if that's high again, we will notify the property owner and get with the landscaper and maintain that area. We can include the areas, the growth around fire hydrants and things like that, so we can report that.
And what about there was some other photos of just junk sort of dumped there?
Yeah, any illegal trash or anything that's dumped, and of course, a site that looks dumpy is going to be subject to getting other people putting property trashed there, and it's the property owner's responsibility to remove that. So we do cite them for dumping that occurs in that property and can have that moved. Now, grass happens in 5 days notice, 5 to 7 days notice. Trash, unfortunately, by law is up to 30-day notice, so it does take longer to do that, but we will turn it in for both. We'll look for the property, but if there's illegal dumping there, we can get the debris removed and get the grass cut along the roadways.
Thank you.
Got a question.
John?
Yeah, on the same note, it seems like on O Highway, kind of between the sidewalk and the pavement in a lot of cases, and even on 72, the crack between, there's, in some cases,
Yeah.
we've got grass this high. Is this a MoDOT thing? Is this a city thing? It really looks bad. Of course, we're going into the end of the year, but
Yeah.
for next year, is that something that we can spray, or can we cut it or weed eat it or something?
And 72 looks particularly bad. I mean, the
Yeah.
whole curb line and the sidewalk in there, it is a MoDOT responsibility. The property owner has the responsibility for the grass between the curb and the property line, even if it's in public right-of-way. It gets really hard to do that when it's the weeds that grow up amongst sidewalks and cracks. And so while we would really hope that property owners, adjacent property owners, would use their sense of community pride and go out and do those things, it makes a lot more sense for the adjacent property owner to do it. In the case of 72, and even around the medians that you'll see along 63 and 72, we've reported that. We actually had a conversation with MoDOT a couple weeks ago. They're just impacted by COVID and budgets, and they will get through and spray that once or twice a year, but it does look terrible. And we've debated whether or not we want to step out there and do it ourselves, but we're then incurring a cost and responsibility on areas that is not traditionally city. So we'll work with MoDOT, but before winter sets in, either we'll work on a spray with MoDOT or do something in cooperation with them.
Can we do it and send them a bill?
No. I can tell you can't. You can't send a bill to Big Brother.
Actually, Mr. Butts, I disagree. You can bill them, and you can send them a bill. They just won't pay it.
Yeah, okay. I stand corrected. We have no leverage, or there's no citing of a
The
nuisance.
state's always quick to want something from us, though.
Yeah.
Steve, are they asking for anything lately?
Say again?
I'm fishing for dollars. Sorry.
Christina.
Terry? Christine, I'll come back to you.
Oh, Christine? There are a lot of intersections, at least in my neighborhood, that there are bushes or trees that are blocking the visibility of being able to pull out safely. Who takes care of that? I mean,
Yeah, it's
Is there
another, again, ideally, the adjacent property owner does it. We can get compliance with the vast majority of people where they'll cut the grass, but they just don't do a very good job around signs, against fire hydrants, at that little wedge that seems to pop up everywhere.
right.
I don't think that's what you're asking about
No,
line
I'm
of sight.
asking about, like,
Safety perspective.
Going on to Holloway off of Missouri, there's a tree there
Oh,
that if you're in a truck you can't see, if you're in a car you can't see, and pulling out onto Holloway, there's a lot of traffic, and
Yeah.
sometimes they're coming pretty quickly. And I've almost had an incident several times, and I've tried to sit there and just peek through the leaves to see if someone's coming, but sometimes you don't see.
yeah.
And then on this side, there's an electrical box that's blocking that view to see people coming from the opposite direction. So it's kind of a bad place, but the tree is particularly bad. And then on another intersection, there's a person's bushes that have grown way over, and you have to creep out to see around them, and you're kind of out in the intersection doing that.
Yeah. So if you can give us those corners, then we do make
Okay.
sure that the street department does make sure that the intersections have a clear line of sight. So if you can
Okay.
get,
So
it was
that-
Holloway and Missouri Avenue or somewhere around there, but.
Yeah.
Okay.
I
And,
can
and,
point
and
out
just a
the
suggestion,
exact area.
you're welcome to do that at council meetings, but if you observe those things out and about, and we
Yeah.
should do the same thing, don't hesitate to email or call, and we can get those moving. So line of sight issues and issues like that we can address.
Okay, great.
Christine?
Yeah, I had a similar question about sidewalks. I've been doing a lot of walking the past 5 months in the neighborhood, and there's one particular street where the sidewalks in front of two houses, 3 properties actually, where their brush, bushes, trees are just, it's like going through an obstacle course. And yeah, I could use the opposite sidewalk, but I go up one side and come back the other, and it is a hazard. You know, is that something, I know grass that we can turn in, but what about sidewalk with
on the public right of way,
plants and
right?
things? that
Yeah.
are kind of taking
Christine,
over it?
send those addresses to City Hall.
Yeah.
Okay.
And the more precise location you can give, the better it is. So,
Yeah,
yeah.
absolutely. Thank you.
Carolyn?
There's been so much going on that I really forgot to bring this up earlier, but I want to mention Back the Blue. They had this parade, gosh, what's it been, 5 weeks ago now or something, Chief? Whatever it was, but they had such a great turnout. I mean, there must, I don't know if they count 200-300 vehicles?
A little bit over 300.
Over 300 for the community to Back the Blue, and it was just a really well-organized, well-attended event. So I'd like to recognize them for that. That was fantastic.
Thank you. David?
I just have a thank you for Steve and Darren. I had some constituents bringing me some concerns also on Holloway between Salem and 10th Street. They did a recent repaving, a contractor did, and there ended up being a little bit of manhole cover still not really even, and you'd kind of hit 10 of them as you go down there. And I just wanted to say thank you guys, because your crews came out and did a wonderful job, and I've had numerous constituents call me and say thank you so much. It made a huge difference. So thank you guys.
If there's no other comments, we have two items in closed session dealing with real estate and contract negotiations. Is there a motion to go into closed session?
So moved. Second.
Roll call vote?
Eberly,
Yes.
Allen,
Yes.
Murphy,
Yes.
Bolin,
Yes.
Schneider,
Yes.
Reuter,
Yes.
Bush,
I'm getting hungry. Yeah.
Higgins,
Yes.
Lyons,
Yes.
Crow,
Yes.
Schott,
Yes.
Florence,
Yay.
11 A's.
It's not surprising that you can miss it. I mean, I had to sit in it.
This is